Before you settle in, before you decide this is just another haunted house story, let me warn you, Amityville does not want to be remembered. It wants to be felt. The kind of place that seeps into your thoughts when the lights are off, where silence feels louder than screams, and where the walls don't just listen. They wait. You may have heard the name before. You may think you know what happened there. But the truth is, most people only know the version that survived. The house itself has been trying to tell a much older story, one written in whispers, blood, and unanswered prayers. Imagine standing in front of a quiet Dutch colonial home on a calm suburban street, white siding, black shutters, perfectly ordinary. Children once rode their bikes past it, neighbors waved, life went on. And yet, if you stand still long enough, you'll feel it, the pressure in your chest, the unnatural cold, the sense that you are being counted, not watched, counted. As if the house is deciding whether you belong inside it, or beneath it. They say evil announces itself loudly, screaming, crashing, violence, but Amityville was patient. It learned the rhythms of human life, it listened to laughter. It memorized footsteps, it studied sleep, and when it finally acted, it didn't need to rush. Because the house knew something terrifying, no one ever leaves unchanged. What happened in Amityville wasn't a single night of madness. It wasn't one broken man or one unlucky family. It was a slow infection. A presence that didn't just haunt rooms, it rewrote emotions. Love turned to rage, faith turned to mockery. Dreams turned into instructions. And the scariest part, the house never forced anyone to do anything. As you listen, you may feel a strange pull, like you're being drawn closer, as if the story itself is leaning toward you. That's normal. Amityville does that. It reaches across time, across voices, across screens. Because the house doesn't care when you're listening, only that you are. So take a breath, lock your doors if it makes you feel safer. But understand, this safety is an illusion in Amityville. Once the story begins, the house has already noticed you. And now, let me take you back to where it all began. To understand Amityville, you have to go back long before the screams, before the police lights, before the house became a name whispered instead of spoken. You have to go back to when the land itself was still listening. Long before 112 Ocean Avenue existed, the land was owned by the Shinnecock Native American tribe. According to oral accounts passed down for generations, this land was never meant for living. It was a place where the sick, the unbalanced, and the dying were brought, left to pass on away from the rest of the tribe. A place believed to be thin, where the boundary between worlds weakened. Where spirits didn't always leave when they were supposed to. When settlers arrived and claimed the land, they didn't know or didn't care what had soaked into the soil. Houses were built, families moved in, and one by one, those families left. Some abruptly, some quietly, always with excuses. Always without explanations. By the early 20th century, the house that would become infamous was finally constructed, a large Dutch colonial with 5 bedrooms, a boathouse, and wide windows that stared out like unblinking eyes. To outsiders, it looked peaceful, inviting, even. But neighbors noticed things early on. Pets refused to step inside, guests complained of headaches. Children cried for no reason. And at night, lights flickered in empty rooms. Still, life went on. Until November 13, 1974, that night, Ronald DeFeo Jr., a 23-year-old living with his parents and siblings, claimed he heard voices. Not thoughts, not imagination. Voices. They told him his family was plotting against him. That they were dangerous. That they had to be stopped. One by one, he walked into their bedrooms and shot them while they slept. What shocked investigators wasn't just the brutality but the impossibility. 6 family members were murdered, yet none of the neighbors heard screams. None of the victims woke up. Each body was found face down, as if placed there, as if guided. DeFeo later claimed something had been helping him. Something inside the house. After the murders, the home stood empty, silent, almost relieved. A year later, the Lutz family moved in. George and Kathy Lutz were newly married, hopeful, excited to start fresh with Kathy's 3 children. The price of the house seemed too good to be true, and it was. When the realtor disclosed the murders, George hesitated. Kathy didn't. It was a tragedy, she said. But it's just a house. On December 18, 1975, they moved in. From the very first night, things felt off. The temperature dropped sharply in specific rooms, even with the heat blasting. George woke up every morning at 3:15 a.m., the approximate time the DeFeo murders occurred. Kathy began having violent nightmares about faceless figures dragging her through dark hallways. The children spoke of an imaginary friend named Jody, described as a large pig with glowing red eyes. At first, they laughed it off. Then the smells started, rotting garbage, sulfur, sweet decay. No source could ever be found. Black sludge oozed from the walls in the sewing room. Flies swarmed in winter, doors slammed on their own. Crucifixes turned upside down, and George, once gentle and patient, became angry, possessive, cold. He grew obsessed with the basement, convinced there was something wrong with its walls. He started chopping wood obsessively, even in freezing weather, as if driven by an unseen command. Kathy felt watched constantly. Not from outside but from inside the house, from the walls, from the ceilings, from the space behind her eyes when she tried to sleep. They brought in a priest to bless the home. During the blessing, the priest felt an overwhelming sense of dread. A deep, internal voice told him to leave. When he sprinkled holy water, Kathy screamed as if burned. The priest fled, later developing blisters on his hands and falling gravely ill. He never returned. Within 28 days, the Lutz family ran from the house, leaving behind belongings, furniture, even their beloved dog. They never went back, but here's the part most people don't talk about. After the Lutzes left, other families moved in over the years, and while some claimed nothing happened, others reported strange occurrences: doors locking on their own, feelings of suffocation, recurring nightmares about a man with black eyes standing at the foot of the bed. Because Amityville doesn't haunt everyone the same way. It chooses what will break you. And the house? The house is still standing, waiting. What happened next is where Amityville stops being a story and starts becoming a warning. Because the house didn't explode into chaos all at once. It tightened slowly like a hand around a throat, patient enough to let its victim believe they could still breathe. George was the first to change. At night, Kathy would wake up and find him sitting upright in bed, eyes open, staring toward the bedroom door, not blinking, not breathing normally. When she whispered his name, he didn't respond. It was only when she touched his shoulder that he snapped back, gasping like he'd been pulled up from deep water. He never remembered these moments. He only complained of exhaustion bone deep, a natural exhaustion, as if sleep itself had been stolen from him. And every night, without fail, he woke at 3:15 a.m. not to an alarm, not to a noise, to something calling him. Downstairs, the house made sounds that didn't belong to wood or pipes. Heavy footsteps crossed the living room when no one was there. The front door unlatched itself. The sound of breathing drifted through the hallways, slow, wet, deliberate. Kathy began sleeping with the lights on, but even then she could feel it, the pressure of something leaning close, studying her face in the dark. The children were changing too. Missy, the youngest, spoke to Jody more frequently. She said Jody lived in the walls and liked when the house was quiet. One night, Kathy found Missy standing at her bedroom window in the freezing cold, smiling. When asked why she was awake, Missy replied calmly, Jody wanted to see outside. When Kathy pulled her away from the window, she noticed deep scratches in the glass, long, vertical marks, as if something had dragged claws down the outside trying to get in, or trying to get out. The basement was where the house showed its true face. George became obsessed with it. He claimed the walls were shifting, breathing. He swore there was a hidden room behind the brickwork. One night, driven by a compulsion he couldn't explain, he tore part of the wall apart and uncovered a small, red-painted room. The air inside was thick, metallic, and warm, as if it had been sealed around something alive. George stood inside that room for hours. When Kathy found him, he was smiling. The house began turning faith into pain. Kathy tried praying at night. The words felt wrong in her mouth, heavy and sour. One evening, she placed a crucifix above the bed. In the morning, it was upside down. She turned it back. The next night, it was ripped off the wall entirely, lying cracked on the floor beneath deep gouges in the wood, as if something had grabbed it and crushed it in fury. Then came the voices, not loud, never loud. Whispers that slithered into the spaces between thoughts. Kathy heard them while cooking. George heard them while chopping wood. They didn't demand, they suggested. She's lying to you. They don't respect you. This house understands you. George grew violent, not physically at first, but emotionally. His eyes darkened. His warmth vanished. He stared at the children with resentment, as if they were intruders. Kathy felt like she was living with a stranger wearing her husband's face. At night, she woke to find him standing over her with a blank expression, fists clenched, whispering words he didn't remember saying. Blood appeared without wounds. Kathy found red stains on the staircase, on the walls, on the bedsheets. They vanished when she tried to clean them, only to return later in different places. One night, she woke screaming after feeling something warm dripping onto her face. When George turned on the light, they saw it, blood oozing from the ceiling directly above her, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The house was no longer hiding. It wanted them afraid. The worst night came without warning. The temperature dropped so low that frost formed on the inside of the windows. The children screamed from their rooms, claiming something was standing in the hallway. Kathy ran toward them and froze. At the end of the corridor stood a tall, shadowed figure with glowing eyes sunk deep into its skull. Its shape flickered, stretching too long, bending at impossible angles. It didn't rush, it didn't chase, it waited. George entered the hallway behind her and something inside him snapped. Kathy saw it in his face, the absence, the hollow calm. The same calm described in Ronald DeFeo Jr.'s police report. George raised his hands, trembling, as if fighting an invisible force. His voice wasn't his own when he spoke. "This house needs blood." The walls began to bleed again. Doors slammed shut. Windows rattled violently. The children screamed as black shapes poured from the corners of the ceiling, crawling, dripping, whispering all at once. The house groaned like it was waking from a long sleep. Kathy grabbed the children and ran. Behind them, George screamed not in rage, but terror, as if something inside him was being torn loose. He collapsed at the front door, clawing at the floor, sobbing, begging the house to stop talking. And for a moment, just a moment, it almost didn't. The house had tasted fear, rage, desperation, and it wanted more. If Kathy had hesitated, if she had gone back for a single suitcase, if she had believed the house's final whisper, "You can't leave," the story would have ended very differently. But she didn't. Barefoot, half-dressed, shaking, they escaped into the freezing night. Behind them, the lights in the house turned on, one by one, as if something inside was disappointed, and smiling. The Lutz family never returned to 112 Ocean Avenue. They didn't pack, they didn't explain, they didn't look back. In the days that followed, they slept on couches, in spare rooms, anywhere that wasn't there. Kathy woke up screaming every night, convinced the walls were closing in. The children refused to sleep alone, and George barely spoke. When he did, it was only to ask the same question over and over again, his voice hollow and frightened. "Did I hurt anyone?" The house had let him go, but not without leaving fingerprints on his mind. Investigators, skeptics, reporters, and psychologists all tried to dissect what happened. Some called it mass hysteria, others blamed stress, suggestion, imagination. But no one could explain how a family could flee their home in the middle of winter without shoes, money, or belongings, terrified of a building that stood perfectly still behind them. Over the years, new owners moved into the house. And the house behaved. No blood, no voices, no crawling shadows, almost as if it had learned. Almost as if it knew when to sleep, but those who stayed there longest reported something subtle, something worse. An overwhelming sadness, sudden anger with no source. Nightmares that felt too personal to be dreams. The sensation of waking at night to a presence standing just out of sight, watching, breathing, waiting to be noticed. Because Amityville doesn't need constant chaos, it needs time. The DeFeo murders were not the beginning, they were the house stretching for the first time in public. The Lutz family wasn't an ending, they were an experiment. A test of how far it could push before someone broke. And it learned a crucial lesson: fear works best when people doubt it. Today, 112 Ocean Avenue still stands. The address was changed. The windows altered. The reputation softened. Children still ride bikes past it. Neighbors still wave. Life still goes on. But sometimes, late at night, people walking by swear they see lights flicker in rooms no one occupies. They hear a knock echo from inside the walls. They feel the sudden urge to hurry away, heart racing, breath shallow without knowing why. And somewhere, deep beneath the floors, beneath the land, beneath memory itself, something ancient remains awake. It remembers the sound of gunshots muffled by sleep. It remembers prayers that burned. It remembers a family running barefoot into the cold. Most of all, it remembers how close it came to being fed again. Amityville isn't a haunted house, it's a patient one. And it doesn't need you to believe in it. It only needs you to listen, because the moment you do, the house knows where you are.